Have you ever prayed for something desperately, only to watch years go by without an answer? Have you ever received what you prayed for, only to lose it and wonder if God was listening at all? Today's story is about a queen who faced both of these heartbreaks and how her unwavering faith in the Rosary ultimately changed the course of history and gave the Church one of its greatest saints. Our story begins in medieval France with a woman named Blanche of Castille. She wasn't just any woman, she was the Queen of France, married to King Louis VIII. She had wealth, power, position, and influence. But there was one thing she desperately wanted that all her royal status couldn't give her: a child. Year after year passed. 1 year became 2. 2 became 5. 5 became 10. 12 years of marriage and still no children. For any woman, this would be painful. But for a queen, it was more than personal heartbreak. It was a political crisis. A kingdom needed heirs. A dynasty needed to continue. The pressure on Queen Blanche must have been enormous. But beyond the political concerns, there was the simple human longing. Blanche wanted to be a mother. She wanted to hold a baby in her arms, to raise a child, to love and nurture a new life. And month after month, that dream seemed impossible. Into this situation came Saint Dominic, the great preacher and founder of the Dominican order. He was also the one who had received the Rosary from Our Lady herself, and was spreading devotion to it throughout Europe. When he visited Queen Blanche and learned of her sorrow, he didn't offer empty platitudes or political solutions. He gave her something far more powerful. Saint Dominic advised the Queen to say the Rosary every day, asking God for the grace of motherhood. It was simple advice, no complex rituals, no expensive pilgrimages, just daily, faithful prayer with the Rosary. Queen Blanche took his words to heart. She began praying the Rosary faithfully, day after day, pouring out her heart to Our Lady, asking for the blessing of a child. And then, in 1213, the year after she began this devotion, a miracle happened. Queen Blanche gave birth to her first child, a son named Philip. Can you imagine her joy? After 12 long years of waiting, of praying, of hoping, she finally held her baby in her arms. Her prayers had been answered. The Rosary had worked. God had been faithful. But then came a heartbreak that would have destroyed many people's faith. The baby Philip died in infancy. The child she had waited 12 years for, the son she had prayed so desperately to receive, was taken from her. It would have been so easy for Queen Blanche to become bitter, to give up on prayer, to feel that God had played a cruel trick on her. But Queen Blanche did the opposite. Instead of turning away from the Rosary, she turned toward it with even greater intensity. Instead of losing faith, she deepened it. She sought Our Lady's help more than ever before. And she did something remarkable. She didn't just pray alone anymore. Queen Blanche had a large number of rosaries distributed to all members of the royal court and to people in several towns throughout the Kingdom of France. She mobilized an entire nation to pray. She asked everyone to join her in asking God for a blessing that this time would be complete, a child who would live, who would grow, who would fulfill God's purpose. Think about the faith that took, after experiencing such devastating loss, to not only keep praying herself, but to invite others to join her prayer. To believe that God wasn't finished, that there was still hope, that the Rosary's power wasn't exhausted. This is the kind of perseverance that changes history, and God answered. In 1215, just 2 years after losing Philip, Queen Blanche gave birth to another son. But this wasn't just any child. This was Louis, who would grow up to become King Louis IX of France, known to history as St. Louis, one of the greatest saints and one of the most exemplary Christian kings who ever lived. St. Louis would lead crusades, establish justice throughout his kingdom, care for the poor and sick personally, and live a life of such holiness that the Church would canonize him as a saint. He built hospitals and Saint-Chapelle in Paris. He reformed the legal system to protect the vulnerable. He was a model of what a Christian ruler should be: powerful yet humble, wealthy yet generous, commanding yet compassionate. All of this great saint, this transformation of a kingdom, this model for Christian leadership, began with a grieving mother who refused to give up on the Rosary. What can we learn from Queen Blanche's story? First, that God's timing is not our timing. Blanche waited 12 years for her first answer to prayer. That's longer than many of us have been praying for anything. Yet she persevered. Second, that setbacks don't mean God has abandoned us. When Philip died, it could have seemed like the Rosary had failed, like the prayers were worthless. But Blanche understood something profound, that God's plan was bigger than she could see in that moment of grief. Third, that communal prayer is powerful. Blanche didn't just increase her personal devotion, she invited others to join her. She spread rosaries throughout the kingdom. She created a network of prayer that stormed heaven itself. And finally, that the fruit of patient, faithful prayer often exceeds what we could have imagined. Blanche wanted a son. God gave her a saint. She wanted an heir for France. God gave France its greatest king. She prayed for a complete blessing, and she received more than she could have dreamed. So if you're waiting for answered prayer right now, remember Queen Blanche. If you've received what you prayed for only to lose it, remember Queen Blanche. If you're wondering whether to keep praying or give up, remember Queen Blanche. She teaches us that perseverance in the Rosary, even through heartbreak, even through waiting, even through loss, ultimately brings blessings we cannot imagine. Pick up your Rosary today. Pray with the faith of a queen who believed God wasn't finished with her story. And trust that God, in His perfect timing, will answer in ways that might just change history.